You don't fail to learn English because you are not smart enough. You fail because you are afraid. Afraid of sounding wrong. Afraid of being judged. Afraid of your own voice. And that fear grows in silence. It stays with you when you understand everything but say nothing. It follows you when you want to speak but freeze. It whispers, "Stay quiet, it's safer." But what if the real horror is not making mistakes? What if the real horror is never speaking at all? There was a boy named Armand. He understood English very well. He could read books, watch movies without subtitles, and understand difficult words, but he never spoke. In school, when the teacher asked questions, he stayed quiet. When friends spoke in English, he smiled but said nothing. Inside, he had answers, but his mouth refused to open. Every time he tried, his heart raced, his throat tightened, and his mind went blank. Slowly, silence became his comfort. But silence has a price. One day, Armand got a big opportunity, a scholarship interview. He prepared everything, he studied hard and knew every answer, but when the interviewer asked, "Tell me about yourself," Armand froze. His mind went empty, his voice disappeared. Seconds felt like hours. In that moment, his fear spoke louder than his knowledge, and he lost the opportunity, not because he didn't know English, but because he was too afraid to use it. That night, something strange happened. Armand had a dream, a dark dream. He found himself walking inside an old, empty house. The walls were cracked, and the air was cold. There was a whisper, soft at first, then louder. "Don't speak, don't try, you will fail." Armand looked around, scared, and asked, "Who's there?" But his voice echoed weakly. Suddenly, he saw a shadow in the corner. It looked like him, same face, same eyes, but darker and colder. It stepped closer and said, "I am you." Armand stepped back and said, "No, you're not." The shadow smiled and replied, "I am the version of you that never speaks." The room grew darker. You stayed quiet, so I grew stronger. Armand's heart pounded as the shadow moved closer. "You think silence protects you," it said, "but silence is where I live." Armand tried to speak, but his voice shook. "I just don't want to make mistakes," he said. The shadow laughed. "Mistakes? You're already making the biggest one. You are choosing fear over growth." The walls began to close in. You had chances, you stayed silent. You had words, you hid them. You had a voice, but you buried it. Armand fell to his knees. "I was scared," he whispered. The shadow leaned closer and said, "And now I own you." Armand woke up sweating, his heart racing, but something inside him had changed. For the first time, he saw his fear clearly. It was not protecting him, it was controlling him. That was the moment of change, the moment everything begins to shift. Fear is not your enemy, avoiding fear is. When you run away from speaking, your fear grows stronger. When you stay silent, your confidence becomes weaker. Your brain learns something simple: silence equals safety, but it is a lie. Because every time you choose silence, you lose a part of yourself. And every time you speak, even if it is wrong, you grow. You don't become confident first and then speak. You speak first and then become confident. Armand understood this, and he made a small but powerful decision. He would speak no matter what. The next day, he stood in front of a mirror and said, "My name is Armand." His voice was shaky, but he didn't stop. "I want to improve my English." Again and again, every day. Then he started speaking to others. Short sentences, simple words, sometimes wrong, sometimes awkward. People laughed sometimes, but he didn't break, because now he understood the truth. The real fear was not speaking, and he had already lived that horror. Fear shrinks when you face it. At first, speaking feels heavy, your heart beats fast, your hands shake, but every time you speak, the fear loses power. Like lifting a heavy weight, it feels impossible at first, but with time, you become stronger. Armand practiced every day, 5 minutes, then 10, then more. Slowly, the fear became smaller. Mistakes are not your enemy, they are your teachers. Most people wait to be perfect before they speak, but perfection is a trap. Armand used to think the same way. He wanted perfect grammar and perfect pronunciation, so he said nothing. But when he started speaking, he made many mistakes, and that is when he learned the fastest. Like a child learning to walk, you fall, but you don't stop. Your identity shapes your reality. If you believe you are bad at English, your brain will prove it true. You will stay silent, avoid practice, and never grow. But if you say, "I am learning," everything changes. Armand stopped saying, "I can't speak." He started saying, "I am becoming a speaker." That small change changed everything, because your identity controls your actions, and your actions create your results. You are not weak. You are not incapable. You are not bad at English. You are someone who has been silent for too long. But silence is not your destiny. It is just a habit, and habits can change. Every time you speak, you break that habit. Every time you try, you become stronger. You are not becoming perfect. You are becoming brave, and bravery changes everything. Armand did not become perfect overnight, but he became different. He spoke more, he feared less, and one day, another opportunity came, another interview. This time, his heart still beat fast, but he didn't run. He spoke. Simple words, clear voice, not perfect, but real. And this time, he didn't lose. So remember this, your voice is not your enemy, your silence is. The fear you feel is not a wall, it is a door. And every time you speak, you open it, slowly but surely. And one day, you will look back and realize that the thing that once scared you the most became your greatest strength. Because the real horror was never making mistakes. The real horror was living your whole life without ever using your voice.